Welcome to Community Talk, a public affairs presentation of the MSA United Way and Super Talk 1270. Now your host, Jena Gullo.
Welcome to United Way's Community Talk. I am your host, Jena Gullo, the MSA United Way Executive Director, and co-hosting with me this morning, Mr. Scott Hansen.
Oh, glad to be here.
Thanks for being here, Mr. Hansen. Thanks for putting these shows together. And a special thanks to Town Square Media, Super Talk 1270, and our friend Jim Walsh. Thanks, Jim, for being here. We have a really good show today. Thanks, Scott, again, for putting it together. Scott, we were talking in our office about all the changes we've been seeing in the Bismarck Mandan community, and you thought it'd be a great idea to bring in our friend, Brian Ritter from BMDA.
I am excited to be here, Jena.
Thanks for being here.
Fantastic.
You are excited.
You know, I don't know why people always look at me with that face when I start shouting into a microphone. Come on, it's 11 o'clock. I'm just starting to wake up a little bit.
Well, you're going to wake everybody in the audience up, that's for sure. Let's hope it's no one's alarm
Here
clock.
we go.
Wake up, Bismarck Mandan.
Buckle up.
Yeah, no, we've seen a lot of really exciting changes over the last few years. I can't believe it's been almost 10 years since I moved to Bismarck, North Dakota.
Has it really been 10 years?
It really has been. Wow. And, you know, it's interesting, when I came, we had the old airport. So since then, we've gotten the new and improved, the humongous four-gate airport.
You need them all.
Yep.
You need them all. And we might even be a little bit short, because don't forget that American Airlines starts flying out of Bismarck October 2nd. Direct flights to Dallas-Fort Worth and Chicago O'Hare. You
know, that's really exciting, Brian. And what role did BMDA play in helping to bring in the new airlines? You have Frontier now. You have, Allegiant. How long has Allegiant been here?
Allegiant's been here for probably about the same amount of time that you've been here as well, Jena. I think what's important to realize, everything that happens in this community, nothing happens by itself. Nothing happens in a vacuum. And so an effort like that to bring a new airline, whether it's Frontier or added United service or American starting in October, everything truly is a partnership. It's a community effort. And so God bless the good people at the Bismarck Airport, the Bismarck Mandan Chamber of Commerce. There are a tremendous amount of community partners and effort that goes into an airline or an effort like that. For instance, anytime we talk to an airline or a new service provider about coming to our community, of course they want to quantify. You know, it's one thing for me as the paid guy to come and say, hey, we need you in our community. But whether it's a hotel developer, whether it's an airline, whether it's a new business, they want to see facts. They want to see numbers. They want to see figures. They want to know exactly what are those dollars being spent in the community.
So which entity in the community is responsible or tasked with that?
Well, I would say for the statistics portion, we are very well positioned. The BMDA, also known as the Bismarck Mandan Development Association, we've been around since 1979. And our organization was originally formed as a downtown redevelopment organization, because at that time, believe it or not, Gateway Mall just opened up. Kirkwood Mall had just doubled in size. And so we needed an organization to help revitalize the downtown. This is before the downtowners, who do a great job of it now. And so our organization was tasked with doing that, successful in that, grew into community-wide in terms of the city of Bismarck, and then grew into metropolitan-wide, Bismarck, Mandan, Burley, and Morton County.
Which you cover Burley and Morton County, the entire counties. That's great.
Yeah, so we've got projects over all those boundaries. And our main function is to promote sustainable economic growth within Bismarck, Mandan, Burley, and Morton County. Now, if we go back to when you first came here, Jena, that job meant job creation. That meant bringing new jobs to Bismarck and Mandan, because we had a tremendous amount of people who were underemployed. I don't want to say unemployed, because we've never had a huge unemployment rate here. But you had a population that was underemployed, that was looking for better employment.
Can I ask, what was the unemployment rate about 10 years ago? Do you have any idea?
Probably 5.
Okay.
Maybe a little over that. We've never really been above 5%.
Great.
And so 10 years ago, it meant creating new jobs, and we were very successful in that. Whether it was Aetna, formerly U.S. Healthcare, Sykes, Coventry, Unisys, Bobcat expansions, things like that. And so that's what we needed. We need to create new jobs. Fast forward. Now you look at our market now. Unemployment rate is about 2.2%. That's the lowest of any of the 382 metropolitan areas across the country. You've got right now about 4,200 open jobs throughout Bismarck and Mandan. So our task isn't to create jobs anymore. I mean, we're never going to stop trying to do that. Please understand that. We're never going to rest on our laurels. We're never going to become complacent in what we are in terms of job creation. We're always going to try to do that. But now the focus is more on workforce development, trying to bring more people to this community to fill those open jobs. And that's a tall order. But luckily, we're well positioned, I think, to do that.
Well, and I think we're all seeing it across every sector around the community in both Bismarck and Mandan. You see the signs up everywhere. No workforce. My parents were here visiting from New York, talking about the Dairy Queen, around the corner. No workforce. They said, isn't this their prime season? And I said, it's so difficult. It's so difficult for us to find the employees with the skills that we need. And so I'm really interested. We're going to talk more during the next segment to learn more about what are your efforts with that recruitment, because you've got to be facing a lot of challenges.
Certainly.
And also discuss some of the major players that are involved in BMDA, because it's interesting. Brian and I just met about a week or so ago.
We were up the street.
Yeah, and we're talking about how your board of directors, your president, is it Dr. Lambert?
Dr. Lambert is my immediate past chair, so he just got off.
Who is your current?
Mr. Tim Atkinson, who is
Perfect.
Tim is the chairman of North Dakota Guarantee and Title Company.
Very good guy, very good guy. Well, and Dr. Lambert was just my past co-chair for the United Way campaign. Monsignor Shea is a current chair.
On my board as well.
I know, Vern Dosh from NISC. So it's interesting, these folks are the strong community leaders that keep our community strong and really help to guide the direction that the community is going in. And it's not just about economic development. It's also about giving back to your community and taking care of everyone.
We're so fortunate in this community that even as we grow and we make that transition from let's call it a big town to a small city, we're so lucky that we have individuals like that. And whether it's on my board or yours.
Well, and individuals like you, Mr. Brian Ritter,
Thank you,
President and CEO of Bismarck Mandan Development Association. We will be coming back in just a couple minutes. Before we leave, we are looking for some volunteers. Give a local child the opportunities they deserve. We're recruiting school-based volunteer readers, tutors, and mentors to assist children in need. Go to volunteerbizman.com or call us at United Way at 255-3601. Come back in just a couple minutes to hear more from Brian Ritter.
Right now, 50.
Get the traffic and weather information you need anytime on Super Talk 1270 and online at supertalk1270.com.
Welcome back to United Way's Community Talk. I'm your host, MSA United Way Executive Director Jena Gullo, and co-hosting with me today, Mr. Scott Hansen.
Yeah, glad to be here.
How are you doing, Scott?
Good. A little chilly this morning. I still got my jacket on, but
yeah.
That's
I
North Dakota
decided
for
I'm
you.
not going to complain on day one of winter.
It's not day one of winter, Jen. It's still fall.
There's going to be frost.
There will not be frost.
I think there was frost last week.
We're gonna agree to disagree.
So, gentlemen, we have on our show today Mr. Brian Ritter from BMDA. Thanks,
An
Brian.
eternal optimist as well, because it is not going to frost, Jenna.
Well,
you keep bringing it up, that might happen.
They say that what you throw out to the universe, that may happen. So maybe you were optimistic years ago. How long have you been at BMDA?
I've been at the BMDA for about 11 years now.
So maybe you threw that out to the universe. Oil.
That's a lot of good mojo out there. It's a lot of good vibes.
Way to go. We really owe it all to you, Brian.
Well, I
We
can't take
owe
credit
it
for all
all
of it.
to you.
Can't take credit for all of it, but some.
Okay, so talk to me. We were just talking about a couple different things that I want to go a little bit deeper in. We're talking about how your role at BMDA has changed from developing business opportunities and recruiting businesses to come to recruiting the labor force. How are you going about that?
Well, I think it's important to realize that there are two components really to the workforce situation or the labor force in Bismarck and Mandan. First, you've got the attraction of outside talent, because certainly, even if we took all the unemployed people,
don't tell them about the weather.
Even if we took everyone who's unemployed in Bismarck Mandan right now, we would still not fill all 4,200 of those open jobs. Wow. That just wouldn't happen. Our labor force right now is about 70,000 people. So even if you took that small percentage, we wouldn't fill all those open jobs. So we've got to focus on, we've got to look at how do we bring people to the community? How do we get the word out? How do we convince them that it's not 10 months of winter, 1 month of fall, and then 1 month where it's nice enough to go in the river? We've got some perception issues there. We've also got a housing situation, and I think maybe Dwight's going to talk about that a little, in the next segment. But we have to, as a community, play on our strengths. Play on the fact that we have opportunity no matter what field you're in. If you're white collar, blue collar, something in between, we've got opportunity. We have some challenges, again, housing, things like that. But we're looking at ways how to do that. How do we brand the community? How to create an awareness? The other component is what I'll call workforce development, and that is taking that existing population, training them in jobs where we need them. It doesn't make sense if you have if you don't have any open teacher positions, but yet we're going to send 2,000 students to go become teachers and then expect them to come back and fill what jobs? It doesn't make sense. We as a community have to focus our efforts, and that starts all the way down in high school. At the Career Academy in Bismarck Public Schools and Mandan Public Schools, we have to start in high school, and then we have to do a better job of connecting what those business needs are with what our training capacities are in higher education.
So talk to us a little bit about what are some of those focus areas.
So if you look at, if we took and quantified where all those openings were, that we talked about, that first category, it's service. We talked about before the show started. You look around town, you look at the help wanted signs, you've got a service category out there. If you very broadly classified the next most open occupations, they would fall under sales. And obviously I think some would say it's a talent, not so much a skill. If we went right below that, healthcare. Look at our economy, look at our downtown in Bismarck, parts of Mandan. Healthcare between Sanford, St. Alexis, that's a lot of open jobs, and it's a lot of open careers, and it's a wide variety. It's not just brain surgeons, it's not just janitors. It's everything in between. So we've got a tremendous amount of variety there in healthcare. Again, when I talk about workforce development, we have to talk about our education component in Bismarck and Mandan. You look at our higher ed community. I know people don't think about Bismarck, Mandan as a college town, but think about it for a second. Last weekend, we had the United Tribes Powwow, which is a great event. Grand entry was gorgeous. So now you've got 1,000 students out on the campus of United Tribes, and they're training a lot of different skill sets. You go further down the hill, you go up the hill to University of Mary, you've got 3,000 students out there, liberal arts majors who are doing everything from baccalaureate, bachelor's level degrees to master's degrees to doctoral programs. That's a lot of new workforce being trained. Hopefully we hold on to them when they graduate. Then you come back into town, you go to North Bismarck, you go to Bismarck State College. BSC is the third largest college in the state behind UND and NDSU. They've got 4,000 students on that campus. They have a waiting list for on-campus housing because they're growing so quickly. What that gives us is an advantage over any other community in this country because we have the ability to train here in our own backyard, and if we can get those students here, we can train them here, then I feel a lot better about our chances of keeping them here once they graduate. We don't want to see them out. We don't want to see them leave. We want them to stay here, get their education here, and then get a job here.
Do you see any of the universities or BSC or UTTC changing or modifying their curriculum, their programs?
We talked about the volunteers in our community before the last break. We've got great college presidents and
Absolutely.
great staff and great faculty who have come to the business community openly and willingly and said, tell us what your needs are. Tell us where the open positions are. Let us know what we can do to help fill those jobs. Because we have a tribal college, a community college, and a traditional liberal arts college, we've got a great variety. We've got a great willingness on their behalf to work with us, to work as the business community to fill those jobs. That's why I'm so optimistic we'll get past this labor situation. We'll fill those jobs because we've got the ability to do it.
So, question. One of the things that we're all struggling with is that one of the greatest needs are those in the service industry. How do we attract or fill those positions when the cost of living is so high?
Jenna, you're exactly right. In a service category, there is no particular training program. There's no course of study that's going to get you there. For us, really what we've come back to, and I think the community has, is looking at that housing question, because if you're going to bring that category of employee here, of course you want to find a place to live. But of all the new multifamily or single-family housing starts, you mentioned it, those cost of living has increased. So what we're proposing is you take it all the way back down to the base level, that infrastructure, those streets, roads, curb, gutter, sewer, those things. And let's as a community, look at how we pay for those things. Let's look at how we put them in the ground. Let's look at what we ask our developers to come up with as they're developing that infrastructure. Because if we do that better, if we do that as well as we possibly can, and we look at some new ways possibly of doing that, I'm convinced we'll improve and get to a point where we can afford to get infrastructure into the ground and get new houses built, get new apartments built, and get them built faster. And if we open up more property, hopefully a little bit more cheaply. That's, I think, how we're going to get to the service category you just mentioned. It's going to have to start at the very ground level.
So if there's less demand on apartments, rents go down, does that affect the prices of houses?
It certainly could, because the housing market is just that. It's a market. It's a function of supply and demand. But I would say to you this, Jenna. I don't see that demand changing, at least in the foreseeable future. If we look at all the projects, and you drive around Bismarck and Mandan and you look at all the projects, all the business growth, all the opportunity, maybe we won't grow at this 90-degree angle like we have been, where it's going to go straight up all the time. Maybe it'll level out a little bit, but this community will continue to grow. Remember, back during the recession, this community was the only metro area in the country to not be designated as actually in recession. We kept growing when the rest of the country was stuck. We've got a diverse economy. We've got a great higher ed sector. So we're going to keep growing. Maybe it won't go in this breakneck pace. Maybe that's all right. But we're going to keep growing. I don't think the demand's going to change, Jenna. I think it'll change in the way it looks. I think it'll change in the way it feels, because we'll plateau, but we'll be at a new level. Mm-hmm. It's not going to go back down. I mean, we had this conversation when I was in your office a couple weeks ago. When this growth rate plateaus a little bit, it's not going to go back down to where it was in the 90s or the 80s. We're going to find ourselves at a new normal. It's a cliche term, but it's the truth. And we're going to have to find some ways to address those situations and issues that arise.
And so our Bismarck-Mandan area is the 5th fastest growing metro in the United States, and Forbes ranked us number 4 for best small places for business and career. Why do you believe that to be true, Brian?
I think it's the sheer level of opportunity here. I mean, if you are, I don't care what age you are, I don't care what your background is, I think truly here in Bismarck-Mandan, you have the opportunity to become or be what you want to be. Are there challenges? Of course. There are always going to be challenges. But we've got a tremendously diverse economy. We're the state capital. You've got government. You've got healthcare, energy, higher ed, and all those things that build on top of it really create a pyramid that looks like our economy here. And in that pyramid, in those sectors, there's opportunity. And people will come for that opportunity. I firmly believe it.
And Brian, you said even if every person that was able to get a job got one of those jobs, we would still not fill all the available jobs. So how does it work? How do we have an unemployment rate? What's at what percent?
It's 2.2. And if you go back to your college economics class, which I'm sure everyone wants to right now, full employment, or ideally the level where you've got the ideal level of open jobs, positions, things like that, is about 5%. So now we get down to 2%. How it happens? Everyone who wants to work or can work is in the workforce. In addition, I'm not real proud of this fact, but we, at one point, North Dakota led the nation in the number of individuals or residents who held 2 jobs. I think all of your listeners and everyone in this room can probably think of somebody who works 2 jobs in Bismarck and Mandan.
A lot of our clients at United Way do.
Absolutely. That's how, Jenna, that's how you get to 2%.
Very interesting. Thank you for that.
For that economics lesson that you needed so badly this morning.
I think a lot of listeners were really, really curious about how that all works. Brian, thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Everything you're doing at BMDA. We're looking for greater partnerships with your group. I know that you work very closely with the Chamber of Commerce. Every time I see you, you just got done with meeting with Kelvin Nolan.
I hope he's listening.
I hope he is. He's a United Way board member.
Oh,
again,
boy. Well,
doing
then I'll keep
for
it
the
clean.
business community. So, real quick, how are you different than the Chamber of Commerce for our listeners who don't know?
I would say it like this. The chamber we always look to as that voice for the business community. I mean, legislatively, policy-wide, it's that voice for the general business community. The BMDA is that side working on the infrastructure issues, the behind-the-scenes, the backroom stuff that helps projects and issues get addressed.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for your work.
For all you're doing, Brian. We will
Likewise.
be back. We have a great guest coming on. We have Dwight from the North Dakota Housing Authority coming on in just a few minutes. Join us, United Way's Community Talk on Super Talk 1270.
Right now, 50.
Get the app called Radio Pup for your iPhone and take us everywhere you go. Bismarck and Mandan's own Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back to United Way's Community Talk on Super Talk 1270. I am Jena Gullo, your host today, and the Executive Director of the Missouri Slope Area-Wide United Way. Join our conversation. Please, during our radio shows, you can post your question on Facebook. We are at facebook.com/MSAUway. You can tweet us on Twitter at MSA United Way. Or, gosh darn it, just give us a call. Do like we used to do in the olden days. Pick up that telephone and call 701-255-3601. We want to bring community issues to you, and we're always looking for feedback and input from the community. We represent what our donors and our volunteers want. We hope that you'll get involved with some of our events. Amber Jensen at United Way has been planning a paintball tournament. It's hosted by Three Brothers Paintball, and that's located about 15 miles right outside of Bismarck, and the North Dakota Information and Technology Department. They hosted our first annual United Way paintball tournament last year, raised lots of dollars for our community, and had a lot of fun. So people can register. It's going to be this Saturday. Registration is online at Three Brothers Paintball. It begins at 10 a.m., or you can register on our website at saunitedway.org. And I'm going to be out there, which is going to be hysterical because I've never played, and it's for anyone over the age of 8. So that's the only reason I'm getting involved, because I figured if a 8-year-old can do it, well, I'm not quite sure I can do it, but I'll be out there no less. So we have another good guest today. We're talking about all the changes and growth that we've been seeing in the Bismarck-Mandan area and throughout the state in North Dakota. And we just got done talking with Mr. Brian Ritter from BMDA, and we're transitioning to talk to someone about housing, because that seems to be one of the biggest challenges. We'd like to welcome Dwight Barden, the Executive Director of the Burleigh County Housing Authority. Thank you, Dwight, for being on our show today.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
So for our listeners out there who aren't quite sure what the Housing Authority for Burleigh County is in charge of, could you just explain a little bit of your role?
Most of our housing is federally funded. We've got 291 of our own apartments that range anywhere from 1 to 4 bedroom. We also have the voucher program where a tenant who income qualifies, basically paying about 30% of their income for their portion of the rent, can go out and find an apartment, and we subsidize it over and above that. We have contracts for 1,074 in Burleigh County. But with our current federal funding cutbacks, we're only able to support about 830 of that 1,074.
Wow. And when did those cutbacks take place?
They started back about 3 or 4 years ago with the sequestration.
Mm-hmm. And so, gosh, that's had to magnify the housing issue and shortage that we've been seeing.
Yes. And also on those programs, you know, our waiting lists continue to grow because we cannot fund additional units. So we've got currently about 1,080 on our waiting list.
Oh, my gosh.
Just for the voucher program.
No kidding. And how long do people typically spend on that waiting list?
Depending on the size of the unit that they would qualify for, but it can go anywhere from a couple months to a year and a half.
Oh my gosh. And so where are people going? What are they doing while they're waiting?
Well, that's the tough part of it, because the occupancy rate in our community now is over 99%. So there aren't a lot of apartments available for them to go. Plus, as we all know, the rents have increased substantially. So market rate, a lot of the new units that are coming online are way above even what our tenants would be able to qualify for.
Well, that's so interesting. It's an interesting dynamic because we know there's going to be, about 1,000 new apartments that are going to be built in the near future. And so of those, do you know how many are going to qualify for the voucher program?
Not that many, because a a lot of the newer units that are coming online they're charging more than what we can allow on our program. So if they're charging $1,000, $1,200 for a 2-bedroom apartment, our tenants would not qualify to move into an apartment like that. Hopefully that will ease up some pressure. The intent is that will ease up pressure on some of the cheaper units, but the way our community is growing, we're not seeing that happen.
And so for those, how many people are currently housed and using those vouchers?
About 830 families.
830. So, okay, so of those contracts, you said of 1,074, 830 are actually housed.
Right, yep.
Wow. And so then for the 291 apartments, in addition to that, you have...
We have our own public housing units, yes.
Oh, okay. And so you have, in addition to those 291 apartments, people being housed there, you have an additional 1,080 on the waiting list.
Right.
Wow. Those are a lot of folks. And
Right.
is it primarily in the Bismarck Mandan area? Is there one city that is seeing a longer waiting list than the other, or
I would say not.
just straight right across the board?
Yep.
So what can we be doing as a community?
Well, the tough part of it is, us as an agency, we're trying to develop housing for the special needs population, and currently we're putting up a fourplex for special needs.
Where is that going to be located?
And that will be up on North 19th, close to some additional units that Pride is putting up. But our contract cost is $1.2 million for 4 units. So without subsidies and other cash input to buy down the equity on it, it's virtually impossible to make them affordable.
No kidding. And so are these units already spoken for?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
They will open up probably in March, and we will have no problems. We already have a waiting list for
Do you?
those, so, yeah.
Wow. And so I know that we have a housing forum that we're going to be participating in. That's coming up. Is it this Wednesday?
Yes, tomorrow.
And so talk a little bit about that forum and the group, DCIL, that's hosting the forum and what we all hope to accomplish.
I'm kind of hoping to accomplish probably about what we're doing here today is just getting out information to the public as to the specific needs for affordable housing, those, that are low to extremely low income, and also accessible housing. That's also a big shortage in our community. But that's also part of the reason where some of our costs on new construction is a little bit higher, because accessible housing is not cheap.
Well, I was just going to say, with building costs so high, how does one go about building affordable housing?
It's a process. That's the frustrating thing about it is, a project like this starts 3-4 years ago. And, with our funding cutbacks, fortunately, the state has gotten involved in the last 2 legislative sessions and have funded a program called the Housing Incentive Fund. And that has gone a long ways in being able to do some gap financing on some of these affordable projects throughout the state.
And so will you be involved in this next legislative session? Will the Burleigh County Housing Authority take part?
We will take part in one form or another in trying to generate support for refunding the Housing Incentive Fund program again, and any other programs that we possibly could help out, such as for supportive housing.
I used to run a supportive housing program back home many moons ago, and it was really nice because it was not just the subsidized housing, it was also case management services. And is that how it's operated here?
Fortunately, Burleigh County Housing has a very good working relationship with agencies such as HIT, Pride, and Enable. And we have partnered in providing the housing, and those agencies have partnered in supplying the supportive services, and that works out real well. They're professional in the supportive service side, and our expertise is in the housing side. So we've
Very good. Dwight, is there anything that we can be doing, either United Way or community members and community leaders listening, that we can help to, further our state's efforts in providing additional affordable housing opportunities?
just continue to spread the word of the need, and even though the state is doing real well, it puts pressure on all phases of housing, not only needing of single-family dwellings for in the $200,000 to $250,000 range, but for the extremely low, or even housing for those that are working in restaurants and that type of thing that can't quite afford or make a little bit too much money to get on our program.
Well, absolutely. We have nearly 1,100 people on the Section 8 voucher waiting list. Mr. Dwight Barden, Burleigh County Housing Authority Executive Director, thank you for updating us. Thank you for all the good work you're doing. We will be back in just a couple minutes to hear more about United Way, the upcoming campaign efforts, and talk to Mr. Scott Hansen on United Way's Community Talk and Super Talk 1270.
Right now, 50.
Your news leader, weeknights at 6 and 10. Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back. I am Jena Gullo, the Executive Director of the MSA United Way, and your host today, along with co-host Mr. Scott Hansen from the United Way. Thank you, Scott, for helping me out today.
Yeah, anytime.
And a big thank you to Town Square Media and Super Talk 1270 who allow us this time every other week. We are here every other Tuesday from 11 to 12, bringing community issues to light. Just talking about the housing situation, how frustrating it is, and I know everyone knows about it, but gosh, we have 1,100 people who are waiting for vouchers, which means they can't afford where they're living. They're in the lower paying job sector. Many of them are hardworking. They're hardworking families trying to, trying to provide for themselves and be self-sufficient. And it's just difficult choices because a lot of our clients are going couch surfing from couch to couch to couch or living in cars. It's starting to get cold out. I'm sorry. It's just going to be a real challenge again.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's really a large issue, and what is the solution? How can we work together to find a solution to that issue? 1,100 people.
Well, and to find it in a more rapid pace, or to come up with some interim plans until those 1,000 apartments are built. Hopefully those will alleviate some of the lower cost apartments, lower rents. But right now we are in a pinch. What's really interesting, though, is that the last year we did have a 40% decrease in our state in homelessness. And we also have seen locally in the Bismarck-Mandan area, Bismarck Public Schools have about 60 less homeless kids this last school year than the prior year.
Yeah, and they just sent us over the numbers yesterday, and as of enrollment, they had identified about 170 homeless students in the Bismarck Public School system.
No kidding. Yeah. And so we do we do a lot of things at our United Way. We certainly address the emergency basic needs for individuals and families. And one thing that we found out just last year is that kids were going hungry over the weekend. There was a current program that provided backpacks full of food, and they could only do it every other weekend. And so nurses, and school teachers were finding that kids were dizzy. They were weak. They weren't able to concentrate on Monday morning. Lo and behold, the family hadn't eaten all weekend. And so at United Way, we do, of course, support our food pantries. We encourage you to do so. But we also started United Way's backpack program. And within 3 weeks, our Women's Leadership Circle rallied troops around the business community. They recruited about 13 or so different businesses to each sponsor the backpack program for a weekend. It's only $2,000, and you can support up to 500 bags. And these go, Scott, we've delivered them to each of the elementary schools in Bismarck. Mm-hmm. We go across the river to Mandan. Social workers and teachers are the ones that identify these kids.
Yeah, it's been a really great program, and it's been really interesting to see how the community has just really come together to meet that need.
Yeah, and what's even better in my eyes, I can't really use the word better, but impressive, is how the United Way Board of Directors has begun to target the causes of why those kids are going hungry in the first place. Mm-hmm. And so we started our education initiative last year, and this was actually started by some of our partner programs. Neighbors Network was hosted by Bismarck Public Schools. Through the United Way campaign, we were able to hire on 4 case managers that go into the homes of these at-risk students, and they provide support to the family. But I'm not talking about monetary support. I'm talking about linking them to services that already exist. We're not duplicating services. We're not starting new programs. We are just complementing what's already out there and linking people to the resources they need so they can build the skills and become self-sufficient.
Right. It's just about making it more efficient, more effective, and meeting needs, in the most effective manner that we possibly can.
One thing I love is a new effort by the Women's Leadership Circle. They are going to Saxvik Elementary. They're going to be there on Tuesdays. They're going to be helping out the kindergarten classes, second grade classes. And this is an effort you've been working on, Scott, over the last year in recruiting new businesses.
Right, yeah. We are kind of starting an Adopt a Classroom program, and this has been kind of spearheaded by our Women's Leadership Council, but they'll be going into the classrooms and just participating, just being that positive adult role model that our young students need.
Well, it's interesting for people to hear some of the local statistics, and we have phenomenal educational programs, educational systems. Tamara Uzelman is superintendent at Bismarck Public Schools, and Dr. Mike Bitts and Mandan. They're great supporters of our community. They work so well together and with the parents, and they really focus on the needs of the kids of all the students in their classrooms, and really preparing them to take some of these jobs that are open and getting them career ready. And so one of the focus areas, and we really appreciate the support of the superintendents and teachers, has been this education initiative, because at our high poverty schools, there's nearly
35% are not reaching their third grade reading proficiency levels. And we use that as a gauge for, further educational success. If you're not reaching that benchmark, you are 4 times less likely to graduate from high school.
And it's predicted by grade 3.
Yeah.
And so that's why, the importance of getting these mentors and tutors and readers in the classroom, and getting some evidence-based practices for our volunteers. That's what we're focusing on, and that's where we feel is one of the biggest needs at United Way. In fact, that's what you're telling us. In our last needs assessment, only 29% of kids in Bismarck and Mandan, grades 6 to 12, 29% felt they had positive adult role models in their lives.
Yeah, that's nearly unbelievable. It's not something that I think you would assume, or that you would think that it was occurring in our community.
Not in our community, because it really is the good life in North Dakota, and there's so much that we appreciate, and we have to remember that nearly 1 in 12 people are still living in poverty, and that's in the Bismarck Mandan community. So how can we rally around these folks? How do we better prepare them to be able to afford housing, their jobs, daycare, transportation, and so mental health counseling? I mean, there used to be, before our education initiative, a 60 to 90 day wait if you have a crisis. And so we're working on that so that people can get into counseling immediately, within days. I mean, if you have a mental health crisis, there's no way you can keep up on your bills and your parenting and everything else, and even getting your kids to school.
Well, the exciting thing is that, I mean, as we heard earlier, our community is in, we're experiencing tremendous growth with 2.2% unemployment. We have the means to address some of these issues, no doubt about it.
Well, and I think by giving your employees the opportunity to give back, we can all rally together and get behind a good cause and to really target solutions to some of these issues. Scott, you've been working on recruiting a lot of new campaigns this year. What is an employee campaign for United Way?
Well, an employee campaign is you allow your employees the opportunity to give back to the community. And that's, through United Way. We make it easy. We make it efficient. You can invite us in. We'll come. We'll speak to your employees, tell you a little bit about the work that we're doing at United Way, tell you a little bit about the community needs, and you can just go back. It gives you an opportunity to share that with your employees.
Well, what's really nice, too, is when CEOs authorize payroll deduction, because it makes it convenient for people to give. They give $1 a paycheck, $100, whatever they're able to afford. It all adds up, and it's targeted to what those emerging needs are. Chris Block at our United Way office is our community impact coordinator, and he has been compiling all of the scores from the many, many reviewers that have reviewed the grant applications. And then it goes through a very serious process.
Yeah, it's been exciting to see that process in work, to see all the different applications come in, and then to see those volunteers who are so dedicated to review those applications and really, strategically fund those organizations that can make the greatest impact in our community.
Yeah, and they're difficult choices. We were at our last community impact meeting on Friday at NISC, which graciously hosted us. The community impact chair is Mr. John Weber at NISC. And, difficult decisions because over $2 million was requested from our agencies, and they really need your support. Many of them wouldn't exist without your gift to United Way, without our grant dollars. And so it's hard to trim those expenses when they're really having an increase in demand. So if you are able to help us join this year United Way's campaign, have a campaign in your business, join us this Saturday for United Way's paintball tournament. It's only $35. $25 of that comes back to our United Way. Enroll your children in our Imagination Library. Get them free books. Get them ready for school. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to Brian Ritter and Dwight Barden, our guests today. Please join us in 2 weeks. We have another great show for you. United Way's Community Talk on Super Talk 1270.